This episode is about Pallavi Chander. Pallavi lives in Bangalore. She is a trained art, movement and drama therapist. She's been trained in several places in India, as well as the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, London. This episode, we talk about conversations which are verbal, energetic, and in the space of imagination. We talk about making spaces for conversations where they're not actually happening. She talks about dancing in the rain with her mother and how she was as a child. She talks about brave space and safe space. Please listen. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast Theatre of Joy. Today we have with us, I can't wait to have this conversation. Today we have Pallavi Chander, she will tell us more about what else she does, but I know she does a lot of stuff. And who's basically been studying about using art for therapy. That's right, Pallavi?
That's right.
Oh,
yes.
great. Yeah. And so, let's hear it from her. Okay. So first tell me, what all do you do?
All do I do?
Yes.
To start with, in terms of looking at just theatre and theatre for therapy, I am an artist and I started off as a visual artist, but my basis is still in drama. And so I use drama and the arts for therapeutic purposes, but also for play and other processes that open up conversations, community-based work, and also looking at trainings and healing through theatre. So it's really a lot of explorations and a lot of experiments, I would say, but a lot of play with theatre and art forms.
Oh wow! Yeah. And as I love to say, I love conversations. The motivation for this podcast. So, tell us more about how you use conversation for what you do.
Conversations, that's interesting. Because a lot of the work using the arts, when I say arts, I mean visual arts, drama, movement, play. Conversations happen verbal and conversations often happen non-verbal. So they happen through the art form itself.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
The form opens up something, and then you really allow for the form to lead you. And through that, there can be moments of insights, there can be moments of wonder, there can just be moments of play. So conversations happen in many different levels. It can be just between one-on-one, it could be in a group, and it can just be also imaginal. So really playing within the imaginal space of what ifs and as ifs.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, I know 100 questions come up, but tell us about energetic. They're conversations, if they're not verbal, they're energetic.
Yes.
So tell us about any energetic conversation that you've had.
Yeah, really like the question. I want to also, acknowledge that I'm not really thought of a lot of the work I've done in this format. So for me, it's also something that I'm very excited to think through this way. So working with children with diverse abilities, for example, there are children who are on the spectrum and who choose to be mute, so who choose to be non-verbal. So this doesn't mean that.
Sorry, will you tell our listeners and viewers about what is being on the spectrum?
Yes, being on the spectrum would also mean being autistic. And I'm broadly categorizing children with various abilities. They could be diagnosed with autism. They could be diagnosed with Down syndrome, developmental delays, intellectual disabilities. So there are many different tags and labels. So I'm sort of collectively drawing them into diverse abilities. And this would also come into aspects of neurodivergence. And I know these are just labels and terms we're all learning to use.
So, what is neurodivergence?
Neurodivergence, I would say, again, going by the understood definition, is that if we were to assume that there is a dominant way of being, which is the assumed way of how all would expect to be, neurodivergent is how some of us might otherwise understand or absorb information and also process information, which is not necessarily doesn't necessarily fall in line with the dominant view. And I'm someone who is neurodivergent. I am dyslexic. And so I know over the years I've learned that I seem to be understanding things a little differently. Something I only learned later. But yeah, when we look at the it's actually brilliance looked at in very different ways. For me, the children on the spectrum, on the autism spectrum, have so many different ways of understanding and absorbing information that we have so much to learn from. And we talk about inclusion a lot, but many individuals have been including us so much in every way. They have, like for example, children on the spectrum who have chosen to be mute. Absorb all kinds of information and in one go, but they have to choose what would fit into what we need, and
I
then
love the way
pass
you
that
put
on.
it. Brilliance, which is different, right? How beautiful is that? Yeah. And I love when you said that a child was chosen to be mute.
Yeah, there have been some amazing moments that I've learned while working with children. There's an assumed thing that a child doesn't know, and there's all these diagnoses that come, that there's all these delays and they have to hit certain marks. And I'll give an example of one child who, I was doing this project. I was learning about arts-based therapy and how to use the arts therapeutically. For 6 months, it was a project. Now, this child had sensory processing issues. She didn't like anything sticky. She didn't like anything that was, uh, that would cause a certain sensation to her hand because she felt overstimulated with that. Or sounds. She was picking up on sounds that sounded right to her, which means you had to sound right when you were singing. So it would be interesting in a circle time, she'll just move towards the teacher who's singing properly, like who's really hitting the notes. Or she'll come and just sit very close and just lean because that sounds right to her. And for the longest time, they were like, oh, she's not picking up anything. It was an assumed thing. But one fine day, somewhere around maybe 5 months after just repeating, and she was in all our classes, she began to just repeat a rhythm. And we all just paused, and that was the moment I said, okay, let's repeat what she does. And I called out her name. She didn't respond. But when I called out her name rhythmically, she responded. So actually, she's taking in all information.
She has a music ability.
She just needed that. And that was a very energy level sort of conversation where we had to pick up on things that the way she was learning or the way she wanted to be communicated. So if I'd give her anything saying, oh, it's time to go downstairs for lunch, she's not going to come. But if I say it in a singing way, she gets up and she starts walking. So that's something we all picked up. Eventually, she began to play drums, and she was playing her own rhythms. So there were a lot that happened, and I learned on the floor. So I learned from the kids. Even some kids, the little ones, we were looking at shapes. We were constantly naming them. And again, we assume that because they're not responding, they haven't learned, right? That's the way we assess. That's how we've learned to assess.
Yes.
One random day, I was just cleaning up And I picked up all the shapes. And when I picked up a star and put it in, the kid just went star. And I was like, oh, oh, okay. He knows this. He's just choosing to say it whenever he wants to, right? That's when I
And
think
that's
my view shifted in terms of
and
how.
that's no good way to evaluate him. There are other ways. Pallavi, I love the softness of your words actually, and I've heard people talk about such children in different words,
Mhm.
and I can just imagine just your presence and the environment it creates for the kids, and your sense of wonder is something that maybe helps the kids also and helps you into
Definitely helps me. Thank you. I think I've always been that kid also. I think when I was growing up, I was a child who wanted a certain kind of silence. In retrospect, I figured that out. It's not. I was a kid who didn't fit into that sit in the desk and learn kind of environment. I would be very naughty. I'd be very interested in lunch boxes and how to disturb everybody just so I'd be sent out of class. Because I loved being out of class. I loved being by the trees. I'm grateful that I went to a school which was large. And the privilege of having space, I think, is something I really enjoyed. So I would be naughty just so I'd be kicked out. And it was not just me, a bunch of us would do it in our class. We'd go right to the corner where there were a lot of trees and we'd play tree to tree. And I remember there'd be days when, I just needed some sort of time. I would go sit there. And no one, basically, I was bunking class, but no one knew. But that was so helpful to just have that space, sit with the trees, stare at the plants, stare at the flowers. Um, and this was a proper CBSE mainstream school with about 100 kids in one class. And
Oh, no wonder.
now I
Well,
realize.
you got lucky that nobody hounded you back into class.
No, they didn't realize, I think, 100. 100 kids. I can't imagine that poor teacher and how I must have troubled her to so it's easier to send me out, right? I, I mean, I didn't do anything silly. I would go and sit with the trees, and I just remember school being that. Playing with trees, playing with friends who also stepped out like me, and just spending a lot of time on my own. So I think I relate to a lot of the kids.
Yes, I can see
Um,
that. Yeah.
and art was an escape for me in school. So I'm not surprised I took it up as a career eventually.
I happen to think
Mm.
that all curriculums in schools should be delivered through theatre and art. It can easily be done. Maths can be done. I've done it.
Yes.
Geography, science,
Yes.
everything.
Yes. Yes.
And just using that danda and ratto and I don't know anyhow. But you fell in the right place.
I think it was theatre that really, it's exactly what you're saying, Harleen, because had I not felt called to respond to that poster in college, I went to a college, girls' school, all girls' school to all girls' college in Bangalore. And they were like, it was boring after a point. Like, what do you do sitting in class, right? So my immediate thing is, how do I then step out of class to do something? There was one poster, the only poster that said no auditions, which was the drama club.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, that's the group I need to be with. And the group had about 30 of us who came together. And those workshops and just I think that was the first time I was introduced to a form that allowed for this sort of space, allowed for play, allowed for us to question things. And I have to give it to all the 30 girls who came together, as well as those who workshopped us, which was that opening. And that little opening was enough
Enough.
to then like say, okay, this is what I want to do. Um, and I think from there, I've only been learning better language to articulate how and what I'm learning. Um, and I think from theater to visual arts to now moving into therapy, it's all been, it's been that winding road. It's never been me planning that this is exactly what I wanted to do.
The meandering road.
Lot of meandering, lot of.
And meandering is so fun.
Now I can tell you it was.
I know.
um, Back then, convincing my parents was not easy, but I must give it to them that they still took a
They
chance.
stop you, yeah.
Yeah, they still took a chance, and she said, "Okay, if this is what you want to do." She saw how much joy it was giving me, that I was a lot more lighter. Um, so I think it was my mother who said, "Yeah, okay."
Basically, she believed in joy. Because I've heard stories where you're having too much fun, go back, you're not working enough, is the normal
Yeah,
response.
actually, now that you're saying this, something just came to me. Mum was always that. I remember. I remember this. I had this very vivid memory when we were young. Um, it was raining. It was April showers, and I know most parents would say, "Go and don't play in the rain," but my mom was like, "Let's go play in the rain,"
Yeah.
and we ran out and we just jumped in puddles on the terrace and just got drenched. Um, and it was not about, oh God, you're going to get sick. It was about, oh God, these are April showers, let's just have fun. And then, the joy of coming down and like drying yourself up and making sure you drink something warm. So still responsible. But she was that person. I think I learned that from her. Um, to be able to access your joy even in times of adversity. I think that's a huge value I've picked up from my mother. Yeah.
And also engage in only those things that give you joy. There are ways of doing stuff that gives you joy, and ways of doing joy stuff that doesn't give you joy.
Yeah, yeah, and I think even in college, the kind of individuals who got attracted to this club were all of us who had these very strange stories, not strange, but stories that were hard to hold or came from difficult backgrounds, or we had our own things. But when we came to that space, there was a lot of allowance and a lot of invitation to be ourselves.
And less judgment.
Less judgment. And I think there was a lot of laughter and a lot of play, which otherwise gets curbed. Um, we did street plays. Uh, it was a task, a bunch of girls going out in the streets. We spoke about garbage then, but many other issues as well. We had fun coming up with these plays. So when we performed them, there'd be really all kinds of responses. You would know doing street plays. Um, the boys being boys sometimes, throwing change at us. But to have that thing to say, pick it up and say, oh, thanks for tea money. I'll tell you how much we have for tea today, girls. And to really pick it up from there, but not getting caught up with that I think you need that collective spirit. And I was grateful to receive it growing up. Yeah. Yeah. I can keep talking.
Oh, that's what we're doing here. So you went to the UK to study.
Yes.
How was that?
Yes, so I did an arts-based therapy course here in India in Pune, where I was introduced to how to use the arts therapeutically. So after I finished my Bachelor of Visual Arts in the art school in Bangalore, I knew I wanted to continue exploring the arts, but not for like galleries or art for art's sake, but something that had um, a little more purpose, a little more collective spirit. And I think it was, I found it with working with children. I want to acknowledge there was a phase where I had this activist spirit in me, and there was a lot happening in the city in Bangalore. So there were a lot of street plays that we did for social justice issues, questioning a lot of the decisions, um, and and I think I hit a moment of disillusionment with that spirit, um, and I and then moved to just working with children because I felt like that sort of disillusionment. Um, I felt that cynical side growing in me. So I knew that that's not the direction I wanted to go. But wanted to keep with, okay, what is possible? Stay with the
So not
possibilities.
only being negative and throwing stones at somebody,
Throwing
making
stone,
somebody
questioning,
defaulted,
yeah, it was important to
and
question
using what you want to do with in a positive way.
in a positive way, but to continue the questioning though.
Mm.
So then that's where I worked at the Art Space Therapy Center in Bangalore, where I worked with a lot of children. And from there, I knew that I wanted to go a little more deeper in understanding what therapy really means. It was in 2012 a growing field in India. It still is, still at its nascent stage. Um, so we were not. I didn't understand a lot of. I was like, okay, what does this process actually mean? Um, but theory felt very heavy that you'd find online. I was like, okay, what is that? What do these things mean? So it meant to go study more. I was grateful to get a scholarship to go to the UK and do my drama and movement therapy at the Royal School of Speech and Drama.
Oh,
Yes. And that was a wonderful experience to be able to, I'm going to use the word joyful indulgence in just the process. I think it was the first time I actually studied, first time I actually loved going to college, um, and just learning the form, the nuances of the form, breaking it down also with a group, a very diverse group that was coming from across the globe. So also learning about different cultures, learning about a lot of the questions which I think was alive for me in India, because I'm in the UK, and in the UK also how you're seen as an Indian, suddenly your identity matters. So a lot of the things were opening up for me. A lot of questions, but still a lot of play. And I got to, I think, meet people from across the globe over there. I did some, in terms of work and explorations outside college, I did some random fun stuff, which also helped. Um, and I think that those were moments of continuing your
joyful
joy.
indulgence.
Yes, joyful indulgence. To give you an example, at the Hyde Park, there's the Winter Wonderland, which is huge in London. And during Christmas, that's the thing. The people from across the globe come to meet Santa there at Santa's grotto. A good way to make money as a student was to go and work in these places. So I worked as an elf.
Oh, you did.
I was Santa's little Indian elf, not so little, but yeah, with a nose pin, dressed as an elf. But it was so. I mean, one can question, but Pallavi, they're coming to meet Santa Claus, but to keep that fantasy alive, to keep that story alive, you have children coming from across, really from Russia and Mexico, and they're there with their letters and their little gifts for Santa.
Oh, wow.
And it just, like, for me, it felt important to do what we were doing there in the cold, freezing.
Although we know there's no Santa.
No, there's Santa. There is Santa's around. Santa will hear. So will the tooth fairy.
Yeah.
So I did these things that I think, thanks to my friends out there, that allowed for me to also access a certain kind of life, certain kind of understanding
Open
of
up
culture.
spaces for you.
Yeah, just the culture space.
In India,
Spaces.
here we are, like Arundhati said in the Joy in the God of Small Things, we are just struggling to just find space. And if you have space in the joyful indulgence, I love that word,
Yeah.
that phrase, joyful indulgence.
Yeah. Because I think it's important to allow ourselves to access that pleasure.
I mean, this is how we learn.
Yes.
This is how kids learn. The day we stop them from the joyful indulgence that teach them early language and body stuff, they stop learning.
Yeah, and I
I
think
don't know why it's something so out of the ordinary, the business of life. That joyful indulgence, it is, you even say indulgence. Why
and
can't we be joyful
it's
also?
just because I think like questions to keep asking is with like when we are going into thinking about children and how children learn and what are the different mechanisms and ways of learning, we do, like you're saying, we do take out the joy out of it, because then we are planning how every little thing about that child needs to be, but then we forget the child. We forget what the child's needs are. We forget that they might have their own process, that they are their own being. Um, and we forget that they might want their own ways of doing things in this time
Yeah, apart
and
from them, the
space.
process.
Yeah.
We take the process of play away from them.
Mm.
And that's also something I have against social activism.
Mm.
A bunch of us who've been educated go there to tell the people how they should live.
Yeah, that
And,
I do agree.
Yeah.
So in a lot of the work I now do with communities, I think there is better language, better ways to articulate these processes now, where we talk about community wisdom, where you go into spaces and say, you know what, you are going to learn, and maybe there's going to be sharing of skills, not so much you
Us telling
telling,
us.
yeah, because we don't know if it's not a community that you belong to, if it's a community that you're stepping into, then there needs to be learning.
But you know what? When you think of that, somebody within the community is also wanting to break free.
Yes.
So community creates its own. So you can. Yeah. I mean, it's about the individual. And if our practices can sort of reach and out to the child, to the individual, and we work out ways of doing it.
Yes, I
What
agree.
fun would that be?
I agree, because I think in groups there is a wisdom in the group, and sometimes within the group them and within their own ways, our own ways of being, there might be some things that are not working for the individual. So how do we anchor certain practices where we can make space for these conversations and for voices to be heard, sometimes for polarities to be held. Maybe what one person is saying is not going to work for the other person, but can we hold both of that?
An allowance, yeah.
Allowed, and then see where to move from it, which I know is going to take a longer time in the circle, a lot more waiting, a lot more waiting with one's own discomfort, because we're disrupting what was, and maybe because what was didn't work for many. Um, so yeah, I mean, when I go into communities to work, I'm always relearning, unlearning, finding ways of educating myself about processes that are also not working. And I'm going to say it's not something that just came to me saying this is what you have to do. I'm going to acknowledge that I made a lot of mistakes, or made a lot of I was unconscious of many things. Hiccups. I was unconscious of many things, which in work I got conscious of. So it's very important to have those people to take things to and say, I know I need to know more.
Yeah, of course.
How do you?
You said it, yeah.
Yeah.
This is, what did you say? Polarity.
Yeah, the polarities. Yes.
No, but working with keeping the polarities.
Yes.
together. Just now you said
Yeah,
something
yeah,
which
yeah.
really caught my whatever. I seem to have forgotten the other word.
Yes, because I think in groups,
Because it's so important for
yeah,
people to know that okay, I can be me and I don't have others to change,
yes.
and everybody can be them.
Yeah.
And
What's this? What's a? I know we can talk about brave space and safe space, but what's a way of sharing what I want to say, which might not be in accordance to what things have been, but still feel safe to share it and be held by the group. So I might not be saying exactly what is accepted, but it's going to bring up discomfort. But I still say it with that sense of responsibility and accountability. Now I know everything sounds very nice and abstract, but it's a lot of
no,
work.
but
Yeah.
art and especially drama
Yeah.
opens up the space a lot, and you don't even know what conversations are possible
Yes.
after that. I mean, energetic and yes, yeah.
And a lot of it has been through the arts. A lot of these
It opens up the
conversations
space.
has been possible because of it. Because I think the arts become that container to hold all these polarities, this discomfort. Um,
Also to give ideas about how else, can we be together.
yes, and in drama therapy, there's this wonderful line that where you say it's a rehearsal for life. Where if I were to do this and if I have these thoughts about maybe this is something we can create, can we play with the idea and see how it would be? So we actually embody that possibility. So you're giving that sense of what it might be for all. So, and when you come out of it, then there's a grounding process and all of it. So when you step out to actually do that, there is that sense of, okay, possibility somewhere within.
I've always liked to see theatre as a magical space where you can try out.
Yeah.
Try yourself out. Today I want to be a bitch. Okay. Try it out because the way life is structured, it doesn't give much space for trying out how you can be different. In fact, you are projected into to remain what people want you to be and think you to be. But theatre, especially participative interactive theatre.
Yes,
The other kind, okay, you're just writing up a script and
yeah.
mugging up a script.
Yeah, very far from that, I would say. Yes. I
But
think,
the other kind of theatre really gives you space.
yeah. And it feels like a nudge saying, yeah, possible.
It's like a window shopping. What you would like to be.
Yeah, right. The roles you would like to take on.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that a lot with the young people I work with, um, and also people who are experiencing mental health issues, um, who, I mean, a question I often ask myself is when we don't fit into a certain structure, um, there is a knowingness that something's not working. And because right now there is a social structure that is beneficial to a few, but many don't. So we're forced to fit into it. But when there is a knowingness that it's forceful, it does lead to certain consequences or impact. So when we're trying those other roles on, that to invite the ease, to stay with the discomfort, because most of it is also unfamiliar to us. To be able to take on a role which is maybe something helpful in the future, but right now it's too new, and it's going to bring up a lot. But if I do it in a space that is allowing,
that allows the bringing up process.
Yes, that's magical, like you're saying, and it's held by the group. Then I feel safe to try it out. And when I feel safe to try it out, my body feels that safety. And in embodying it and the body feeling safe, I can invite it when I need to. And I can build what I need. And can also maybe understand the support systems that I need for this to take shape in the real. So yeah, I think drama therapy has invited all of this language. and trying it out, and learning to work with it in
And the
groups.
space to try it out.
Yes, yeah. The recently we did I run a program called Manasu Matu in Bangalore. It was a part of a larger project called Conversations in Drama series. It was supported by MAP and Welcome
How
Trust.
interesting. Is it available online or something?
So well, there's a lot of our learnings which will now soon be available online, maybe. But yes, the learnings are something that has opened up a lot for me. Manasu Matu was a project where we worked with caregivers whose loved ones experienced or challenged mental illness. So it was for the caregivers, and some really beautiful explorations with the arts opened up. A final learning with the group was that even recognizing the caregiver within us, recognizing that it's only a part, it's not the whole, it's a part, to nurture that part. Now, nurturing that part meant, okay, I can offer things to that part. It's a role that I play when I need to, and I can step out when I need to. All of this is possible within the container of the arts. If I were to just say these things, it feels very abstract. It's not felt in the body. But in doing it in a circle, in doing it with the arts, we did body maps, we did little performances, little explorations, large paintings, small paintings, storytelling. There was a whole lot. It was a series of
There's
explorations.
so many tools available.
Yes, exactly, right?
Only
It's
people
endless.
would learn to use them.
Yeah, I think it's happening. There is a
Yes, more and more.
Yes. For me, again, as someone who was facilitating that process, it was very exciting to see the possibilities because I too come with that identity of a caregiver. So it was very beneficial for me too. So not just in offering it, but even in just experiencing that, I learned so much. And I could feel that joy in my body.
It's a kind of a chill space.
Ah,
With very few. And you know what? Theatre and arts, they are already out of the box. Everything you're operating within a box. Like some people, of course, use even theatre and whatever. So some people use even the art therapy from a box, from within a box. Like you know, I mean, I heard you saying that acknowledging the caregiver and knowing that you can step out.
Yes.
You know, and yeah, it's good to know that you can step out.
Yes. I think even these things can become prescriptive if you're not careful.
Yes.
People can say, you do this, that will be equal to that. And I think I'm going to call it pop psychology. I'm going to call it social media.
Whatever they call it.
Yeah,
if they
because-
want to.
Yes, because in social media, everything's packaged in a way where this will lead to this, and it's a sense of mastery that we have to chase. And I get that it has its place.
It has its polarities, no?
Yeah.
Being a master is a polarity, and on the other side is not being a master.
Yes.
But
And
where is joy?
Yeah, and I think it's in the journey, and I think it might be. I think it's in the discovery of what that process is for the individual. I might read something that really strikes me, and then how do I relate to it? Is going to be unique than how another person relates to it. But if one were to say that, oh, if you think this way, then you mean this, that is again, that's very limiting, and it also feels very constricting. Yeah, as someone who's in the field, as someone who's seeing a lot of this being used, I'm a little wary about how things can go. And yes, it can become very prescriptive. So yeah, there is that I'm conscious of, that I hope we don't limit ourselves with this process. Yeah.
You know, when the question comes in our head, there's gotta be more than this. then we start, looking at everything with a sense of wonder.
I completely agree. I think it's that really listening to that part, to
Mm.
tune into that voice,
Mm.
because there is wisdom. If something's not okay, you tune into it. If something feels like maybe there's something more to it, then to lean towards that and see what that discovery can be. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I've really learned so much today.
This conversation's been really nice because I think so many moments like this one gets to sit to reflect on one's own process, and in a way where we're thinking about it through a certain lens, which is joy. And I think that's something I always keep very close to my practice, which is to continue to access joy and pleasure in the work, because I think that is a response to many things. Yeah. So thank you for this.
Thank you for this. Thank you so much. It's been such an amazing conversation.